Dishonored 2 is the fantastically crafted sequel to 2012's Dishonored, which was a new IP from Bethesda made by the talented Arcane Studios. Dishonored 1 did quite well both commercially and financially, meaning that it would one day spawn a sequel. 4 years later, in 2016, Dishonored 2 would be released, and it was definitely a step up for the Dishonored franchise, both graphically, in gameplay, and to some in its narrative approach as well. Welcome to Eternal Talks, where I make reviews and video essay-ish content, so if you're interested in this type of content, consider subbing to the channel. Without further ado, let's hop into the review. Of course, I'll not be giving any spoilers for the game's narrative, and not even for Dishonored 1, as the story of the Dishonored games, although quite well written, isn't really the game's main focus. Yeah, I really do enjoy the story of these games. The music and atmospheres of both games has been made to perfection to fit with the various notions and themes that are presented throughout the core sensations of the game's narrative and the overall direction it puts you through. It's set way after that of the first game, which gives it a different feeling as the buildings and the city in general looks extremely different to what was seen in the first game. In Dishonored 1, the game's color palette and overall tone was much darker than the second game, which does flaunt its color and beautiful vistas quite exponentially throughout its various levels, which isn't at all a bad thing and gives this game its own diversified identity to that of the original. There is also two protagonists within this game, being the protagonist of the first game, Corvo, or his Empress daughter Emily, of which both have different dialogue and abilities. However, the overall narrative doesn't exactly change dramatically from when switching from one character to another. However, the small differences in choices and how each character develops is still well made and goes a long way to again create this sensation of variation from both of the characters' motives and goals throughout the game's story, which is mutual between the two, as you will notice when you play the first hour of the game. Overall, its story has its well-distinguished merits. Yeah, I would not recommend buying this game based on the very implications of its story beats alone, as I don't think that Dishonored as a franchise will satisfy that sensation of a well-built narrative with engaging characters. However, it does have its own aspects of a well-made story, and overall it's still quite enjoyable, but to me is more used to complement the gameplay and combat of the game. Dishonored 2 borrows many of the gameplay elements that the original composed, yet it refines and innovates upon that original formula to give itself a DNA of its own in terms of the gameplay aspects of the game alone. Players are more free in this installment of the franchise, as they are able to define their own playstyle by the game's incredibly executed blending of immersive first-person action, assassinations, stealth, and ability aspects that give this game such a unique feel to any other games designed around the same core aspects that Dishonored itself is able to innovate upon. Combining many tools at their disposal, players are allowed to use many different and diversified options to eliminate their enemies, either picking them off one by one using the stealth and mobility of the characters and abilities of both protagonists, or ruthlessly attacking your foes head-on with weapons drawn. Emily has her own style of unique abilities, while Corvo retains his abilities, which have now been deepened and expanded upon through the implications of Dishonored 2's gameplay mechanics. The game again features branching upgrade paths for the powers, but also offers the option to play the game all together without the use of any supernatural abilities. There's also the choice to play the game lethally, or by using the more nuanced and realized mechanics of a non-lethal playthrough. The abilities themselves are so damn interesting. There's the blink ability, basically being teleporting, stopping time, and seeing through walls to carefully pick out how you're going to kill enemies within a certain room, and many more. With the use of these unique abilities, as well as the many weapons that you have at your disposal, it creates this unique sense of a sandbox experience that works extremely well in the contextual space of the game's gameplay mechanics, and that's something that I can't explain enough. It's really well made. The gameplay in its entirety has obviously been crafted with a goal in mind, and the passion from the developers is also quite obvious, as the game's entire mechanical systems work in complete conjunction with one another, which creates a gameplay system which is seamless yet hard to master through the many implications of abilities, weapons, and once again that sandbox natural space the game allows for the players to utilize. The stealth is also really well done, and I did feel quite intense during some of the moments in the game, and it's really satisfying to conduct assassinations in absolutely any way you want to, and it's an aspect that adds to the overall complexity of the game's incredibly well-made gameplay systems. Overall, the gameplay and the combat of Dishonored 2 is absolutely fantastic, and is definitely the reason that should sway you into buying the game if you haven't already done so, and when complemented by the story, it creates a product that is both polished and incredibly well crafted through its many systems, which all mold into one collective game that is incredibly brilliant. My final verdict is that you should buy Dishonored in 2021. The game wields a fantastically crafted story, which when combined with the original, creates a satisfying narrative that most will enjoy. And for the gameplay aspects of the game, any player who enjoys a good first-person experience with different abilities and skills will not be disappointed with the uniqueness of how the gameplay of Dishonored 2 portrays itself and how much it truly builds off the merits of the original game in all of its aspects. I'd like to give this game a score as well, which is of course in the subjective nature of myself. I'd like to give this game a breezy 8 out of 10 due to its excellence in many of the areas it tries to do well in, and it absolutely does and excels in those aspects gargantually. Anyway everyone, that's it from me for today's review. I'll see you all for tomorrow's video. Peace.